All right, good morning. We'll start with the attendees that we are now. So hopefully the rest can join when they have installed the snippets or whatever. Anyway, this is the webinar regarding the Windows Server 2016 and the way that the licensing has changed and how you can optimize on your investment on Windows Server licenses. So this webinar is one in a long row of Comparix webinars that we conduct in both English as well as our local language throughout Northern Europe. Be sure to have a look at our website to see if there are other webinars or seminars that you want to attend. And we also have the possibility to sign up for our blog and our different newsletters. Let me say that if you have requests on certain topics that you wish we look into and present to you either in a webinar or in writing, please let us know, as we only wish to spend time on what you want to hear about. You can write me an email or find the local Comparix central email on the website. Anne Rasmussen from Comparix here in Denmark is present as well today, and she will be able to monitor any questions that might arise during the webinar. So feel free to ask at any time. Wait until the end, but there'll be some time to ask questions. You can just write them in the chat, and she'll notify me. I will be able to see it, but let's see if she sees them first. All right. There. Okay, let's start off with the agenda and what we'll cover during this webinar. After giving you an introduction to myself and Comparix, I'll go through how Windows Server licensing has changed over time. I'll do so in order for you to better understand the licensing of Windows Server 2016 and why the things are as they are today. After that, I'll present you with the overall feature set of Windows Server and we'll concentrate on standard and Datacenter editions, as these are the ones most commonly used. There are other editions of Windows Server, but I won't cover them specifically in this webinar. But if you wanna know something about them, just ask and I'll answer. I'll give you an introduction to the overall licensing rules and the minimum requirements that are based on the feature set of the editions. Just as you might remember from SQL Server 2012, when going from a processor licensing model to a core licensing model, Microsoft grants you the right to use a number of licenses through the process of renewing the software assurance in such a circumstance and tell you how you should protect your investment going forward. This includes the software assurance benefits called hybrid use benefit, a means of not only saving some money on Azure, but also give you a possibility of enhancing your investment in Windows Server licenses. We'll finish up with any questions that you might have. My name is Peter Balling-Stockman, and I'm a solution advisor at Comparix, and my focus is on cloud and optimization. I am a Microsoft license and agreement expert, and my job consists of helping our customers with optimizing their Microsoft investment and renewing their agreements with Microsoft in the most optimum way compared to the explicit Microsoft strategy that the individual customer might have. Other than that, I help our account managers conducting the Microsoft evaluation workshops at your premises with the aim of securing both license knowledge for you, as well as a general understanding on how to best optimize on the license portfolio and to be correctly licensed. As Comparix is one of Microsoft's largest and most competent solution providers, we have the means to help you directly on all the traditional licensing programs, as well as helping you when you want to migrate to the cloud via your normal system integrator. Going forward, Comparix is also a cloud solution provider, and the chances are that we have teamed up with your normal consultants on this Microsoft program so that they'll be able to offer you the full Microsoft package with the help of Comparix. Okay, so looking at the different versions and editions that we have had over time, I have on this slide tried to indicate the changes that have happened on the licensing model from one version to the next. I have added Azure as well, since Azure is becoming an increasing part of Microsoft licensing, as we shall see with Windows Server 2016. As you have surely heard about, now Windows Server 2016 is licensed by Core. By the way, just as the way you size your Azure services, Azure servers, I believe that this is the primary reason for the change, even though I'm sure that Microsoft would want to charge extra for the extra power of the processors that you have today with 8 cores in each or even more. A thing to note is that usually when products are licensed by the number of cores, you will not have to add any other licenses in order to be correctly licensed. What you should remember with Windows Server is that you still need to add a client access license to the Windows Server, thus giving either users or devices the rights to access these servers. The licensing rule of the CALs has not changed in the 14 years that I've dealt with Microsoft licensing, but on the server side there's been some changes, as there always are when new versions are introduced. If we think about the different versions of the licensing of these, you'll see that in version 2008 release 2 we had an enterprise edition besides the standard and Datacenter editions, and that these were licensed via a server CAL licensing model. Furthermore, we had some servers licensed by a server license alone. That was the high performance cluster and the web server editions. Going forward to version 2012 and 2012 release 2, only the standard and Datacenter editions were left when speaking about these servers on this line, and both were licensed via the processor plus CAL licensing model. High performance cluster and web server became part of the two editions, and via a cross-edition downgrade rule, you would actually have to purchase a standard edition and downgrade to 2008 release 2 enterprise or these other servers in order to license them correctly. Same thing goes today, but I guess that installations, for example, of 2008 release 2 enterprise are being fewer and fewer. For some time now, Microsoft has pushed for the use of Azure as a means of deploying and running Windows servers, and the debate around private versus public cloud is an everyday topic. For a majority of companies, though, the typical scenario will be some type of a hybrid solution, so there's some kind of certainty that moving or creating Windows servers into Azure really is as easy to handle as Microsoft says it is, or cheaper in the long run when adding all the internal costs to the equation. As said, the sizing of Windows servers in Azure has always been by core, and the price has been via actual consumption. The change Microsoft has made with the licensing of Windows Server 2016 would make sense in regards to giving customers a similar licensing model when moving from their on-premise servers towards the cloud. And we all know that Microsoft only wants one thing, and that's you moving to Azure. All right. You need to know about the features of Windows Server 2016 in order to understand how the licensing has changed. In the previous versions, the two editions, Standard and Datacenter, had the same technology, and only the licensing were different in regards to virtualization. You would license the Standard edition and stack licenses until Datacenter became the cheapest option. In version 2016, though, there's a differentiation in the feature sets, and as such, the Datacenter edition will offer you more compared to earlier for the higher price that it actually has. Not compared to before, but compared to Standard edition. The focus on the virtualization and security, there's a focus on virtualization and security when looking at the features. And in regards to virtualization, you still have a licensing differentiation between Standard and Datacenter editions. The virtual instances are now called Hyper-V containers, and on Standard edition you're only allowed to have 2 Hyper-V containers. This is the same as it has been in version 2012 release 2, but as you'll hear later, the change is when you try to stack standard licenses. This is for the most part not a very good idea anymore because it gets exponentially more expensive when doing so. But I'll come back to that. Microsoft has, though, introduced Windows Server containers, and you're allowed to run an unlimited number on both standard and Datacenter editions. I'm not exactly a technical expert, but I have a couple of slides describing the difference on these things. The difference between Hyper-V containers and Windows Server containers is how they use the underlying Windows Server OS. On Hyper-V containers, every container has its own operating system, and on Windows Server containers, the OS is shared between all the containers on that server. You can think of Windows Server containers as the way we used to have application virtualization, where you packaged the application and had it running on its own in its own sandbox on the OS. This would ensure that it could coexist with other applications that it normally would not be able to coexist with. Another new virtualization feature is shielded virtual machines. This feature is the third in regards to virtual machine security, and here you're getting the full package that includes encryption and other security measures, but this feature is primarily used in hosting environments. So Microsoft is focusing a lot on isolating virtual servers as one of the primary things when describing version 2016 of Windows servers. And they do it by the shielded virtual machines as the most isolating feature, and then the Hyper-V containers as the individual virtual servers as we know, and finally the Windows servers containers. And just as with Windows desktop operating system, Microsoft is now launching Windows servers via branches. There are two branches to choose from, but unlike Windows desktop operating system, one of the features on the server demands a particular branch. Long-term service branch is the default option for Windows Server 2016 when installing the server with the complete desktop experience and the server core, but you have the option to install a scaled-out edition called Nano Server, which is new in this version and used for administration purposes. Nano Server is a feature that you can only utilize if you have active software assurance on the Windows Server license. When you install Nano Server, you can only do so with current branch for business. You cannot choose a long-term service branch. And since you automatically get new feature updates with this branch, you will have to have software assurance in order to be compliant. And when this is the case, you will also need to uninstall Nano Server if you do not renew your software assurance. And this is important to remember, and I'll venture a guess that many will be incompliant on this exact point in 1 or 2 years from now. When software assurance is not renewed, you still have the Nano Server and you get the feature updates. Microsoft won't stop it, but you'll be wrong, you'll be incorrect licensed. You know, of course, the long-term service branch, you can choose to postpone the feature updates forever, and the current branch for business, you'll get them automatically. So, the licensing basics of Windows Server 2016, you always license the physical server. This hasn't changed, and you will have to license all the physical cores available for the operating system in that server. That hasn't changed either. Now you may ask yourself, can I really have cores in a server and not have to license them? And the answer to that question is actually yes, you can. If the operating system cannot see and utilize the cores, you will not have to license them for Windows servers. It's not like Oracle or any other vendors that do that. For every physical processor, you'll have to license a minimum of 8 cores, regardless of a possible lower number of actual cores in that particular processor. Furthermore, the minimum number of cores per server is 16. That's equaling the former minimum of 2 processors per server. So you can see that you actually get 8 cores per processor, and that Microsoft has actually priced the cores accordingly to the processor licenses, 8 cores per processor when you renew your software assurance. That'll be the same price. If you have more than 8 cores in a processor, you'll have to, of course, license the amount of cores that you have. But the minimum 8 cores is pretty important to remember, and minimum 16 cores per server. As a standard edition license gives you the right to execute 2 Hyper-V containers on the server. The previous license models stated that you would add a standard edition license for every 2 Hyper-V containers to license these. Remember that Hyper-V containers is Microsoft's new term for virtual servers. Be aware that this has changed in version 2016. From now on, when adding 2 Hyper-V containers, you will have to license the whole server again with cores. So you don't just stack according to an extra number of virtual machines or Hyper-V containers. You license the entire server again. This doesn't really mean anything as long as you only have 2 processors in the server, and these processors have less or equals 8 cores each. But as soon as you have a server with 4 or more processors, or a server with more, or sub-processor with more than 8 cores, then standard edition will be very quickly very expensive, and you're better off with Datacenter edition that gives you an unlimited virtualization. As said previously, you will need CALs as well. If you do not have active software assurance on your CALs, you will need to purchase new ones, as version 2016 CALs is needed for version 2016 servers. You can license these either by device or user, and licensing on the CALs has not changed. One thing that you will have to remember is that external users accessing your data, either directly or indirectly, will have to be licensed as well. My guess based on knowledge is that 25%, not 25, 75% forget to do so because either they don't know when external users are actually accessing the data or they just forget it. It's a common mistake I see. The problem arises because having a hybrid environment with, for example, SharePoint or Skype for Business servers, the external users are licensed for these application servers, but not for the Windows servers. So you can either license via CALs, or you can add a Windows Server external connector to the physical server for an unlimited number of users. But you will have to do one or the other, and I see that Microsoft is picking up on this after a long period of time where they haven't really talked about it. So what do you do if you have Windows servers today with active software assurance that need to be renewed? Since you're going from a processor licensing model to a core licensing model, you will be granted the right to renew software assurance on the amount of cores that you have in the licensed processors. Remember, still minimum 8 core licenses required per physical processor. And therefore you cannot just license 4 cores if that's what your processor have. You will have to comply with the minimum rules. Going forward, you may, for software as a management purposes, ask yourself how you would be compensated in either Microsoft or your own systems for the core licenses that you have never bought. You just renewed software assurance on these licenses, but you have never bought the licenses, so obviously there will be no license evidence in either system. This does, of course, constitute a problem. But Microsoft does not give you the licenses, that just grant you the right to use them under an explicit term. And that is that you must be able to produce a report of your system with a number of processors and a number of cores at the time of the software assurance renewal. This report should be an automatically generated report either by SCCM, a SAM tool, or Microsoft Maps tool, or a similar automatic tool, and you'll have to use this when you get an audit, or if you conduct a Microsoft-funded baseline or Microsoft-funded true-up assist in the future. The report will give you only evidence that you were able to receive the license grant. And trust me when I say that Microsoft will make you pay for the licenses if you cannot show the report. I've seen this firsthand when helping a customer on SQL Server licensing because that was the exact same thing, and you know, it's a pretty expensive mistake to lose this report because you will be made to pay. Since February this year, every Windows Server license covered with software assurance has a hybrid use benefit. This gives you the right to pay for Azure servers without paying for the Windows Server license. Your Windows Server license will cover the Azure server if you deploy Windows Server image to this server. Practically, you would simply pay for the much cheaper Azure Linux server and deploy your own Windows Server image. This will save you, I think Microsoft is saying about 40 or 45% on the Azure server, yeah, let's see. Be aware that Standard and Datacenter Edition gives you different rights. With Standard Edition, your license will cover either the server on-premise or the Azure server. With Datacenter Edition, on the other hand, you'll be able to run your on-premise servers as well as up to 2 Azure Windows servers with 8 cores each. So that's a pretty significant number, and you basically get double up on these licenses. So there are several ways Windows Server 2016 can help you get the most out of your investment. As with all versions in the past 10 years, you'll be able to further consolidate your physical servers onto your virtual clusters. But new since February is that server license that you have to spare because of consolidation now can be used to lower the price for cloud servers in Azure. And many, a lot of the customers that I meet, they have a lot of standard server licenses typically to spare because they have old servers that they have merged into a virtual cluster, and you would be able to use them there. Cloud is cool. Everybody talks about it, and companies like Microsoft and Oracle and Amazon, they're committed. It's do or die. Microsoft will do anything that will help you move your on-premise servers to Azure. But there's just one key problem for a start. It's hard to figure out precisely what the cost of your servers in Azure would be. I mean, everybody can size a machine with a certain amount of memory and a certain amount of cores and so on. But as you pay for the consumption, you know, what exactly, how much do you really pay? Microsoft does recognize this and will for a period of time make it easier for you to have a hybrid environment, as many will have, and only move your server workloads to Azure as you figure out what the spend would be for these workloads. And that is what I think you should use these spare licenses for, you know, lowering the cost of the Azure servers. When you have some idea on premises what the cost will be, you can move some servers to Azure and get a feel for it and see if it pretty much looks like your calculations that you have done on premise. You can also use the standard licenses to step up to Datacenter Edition if you want to build your private cloud, your virtual data center. Microsoft gives 20% rebate on step up SKUs from standard to data center throughout the year. So that's pretty significant. So in regards to optimization, we see that standard edition can be more expensive in version 2016 because of the exponentially increasing price when stacking licenses. And that's where there's a greater number of processors, of course. To the contrary, the data center licenses, you can argue that they can even be cheaper than before if Azure servers are used, as the average price of the license will drop. That's at least what I've tried to show you on this slide if you're contemplating using Azure, because that would be a prerequisite in order to cash in on this benefit, and that is a hybrid use benefit you should use to your gain. By that note, I hope you have some questions for me in regards to licensing on the Windows Server 2016. I haven't really talked about foundation server or multi-point server. If you have any questions on that or any other thing regarding Windows Server licensing, you can just type them here. Otherwise, I'll just wait a couple of minutes and hope you you got the overview of the Microsoft licensing of Windows Server 2016. So, any questions?
Hi, Peter. Thanks for the nice introduction. At the end of at the start of the webinar, there's actually one question here. It's, will you send over the slide deck to us? And I can answer that. Sure, we will. You'll get an email after the webinar with the slides and also a recording of the webinar. And then we have another question here. It's, what about System Center licensing?
All right. The System Center licensing, as you know, in version 2012 release 2, System Center and Windows Server was licensed similar, and that's the same thing with version 2016. You will, for every processor license, you will be able to renew a minimum of 8 core licenses per processor. So it's the same licensing as the Windows Server licensing we just went through. I hope that answers the question.
Then we have no more questions.
All right. On that note, thank you for attending. Be sure to monitor our website for other webinars in the future, and have a great day.